Well, good morning. You are listening to the United Way Community Connection Show. I'm your host, Mike Affelberg. We are here every Monday morning from 9 to 10 a.m. on WSMN 1590 a.m. Just a reminder, if you'd like to send us a question while we're on the air, you can send me a message on Facebook or on Twitter to United Way GN, United Way GN. That's our handle. So we're talking today with Molly Hill and Nigel Roberts from CASA of New Hampshire about some of the amazing work that they're doing in the community. CASA is Court-Appointed Special Advocates. So Molly and Nigel, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
We're glad to have you. So I should say, we always have like the paid professional staffer come on the show, and Molly is that. But it's an unusual and special circumstance when we actually have a volunteer come on the show, and Nigel is a volunteer with CASA. So a double thank you to you.
Thank you, Mike.
So why don't we start with you, Molly? So CASA is an organization. Our audience is generally speaking probably not aware of a lot of the work that CASA does and in our community. And so why don't we talk a little bit about what is CASA and what is the work that you do and why does that matter?
Great. Thank you. And thank you for having us today and
of course
giving us this opportunity, especially to bring the topic back to children and to have that conversation. So thank you so much. So our mission and our goal is to represent 100% of all of the children who are involved in the court system because they are being abused and neglected. So we are actually appointed by the court. We speak on behalf of them. We speak to their best interest. We represent their stated interest. And we make sure that while their parents are involved in the court process due to abuse and neglect, that we keep the focus on them and what's important, their safety, their well-being, and what's best for them.
So you're essentially a legal advocate for children who are involved with the court system because of situations that involve neglect and abuse.
That's right. We are CASA guardian ad litems.
Okay. So, and is that all volunteer? If you're an ad litem volunteer, does that mean you're a volunteer? Or how does that work?
So our guardian ad litems are all volunteer. In the instance that a CASA is not able to take it, children are appointed a paid guardian ad litem, but our volunteers or our guardian ad litems are all volunteer. Yes.
Okay. So it's the court itself who would appoint you to get involved with a specific case. Is that how it starts out?
That's right. Yes.
Okay. What are the ages? What ages of kids are you typically working with?
So we take appointments for children from 1 day old. Sometimes DCYF files on parents right when a child is born for neglect or abuse, and in those situations we would be appointed then. And we represent children all the way until their case closes or till they age out, which could either be 18 or in some instances they can extend until they're 21.
Okay, and you're statewide?
We are absolutely statewide. Yes.
Okay, so I'm assuming that CASA is maybe part of a larger national organization. Is that right?
That's right. So CASA is a national organization. CASA New Hampshire is right. We represent, we're just a statewide organization.
Okay.
We actually advocate for, or in this last year, we advocated for 1,538 children, 834 families across the entire state of New Hampshire.
Wow, that's a big reach.
That's a big reach.
Sounds like it's a big need.
It's a very big need.
So how many kids come into your ranks, would you say, every year?
So those numbers represent about 75% of all of the cases that DCYF files.
So did you say how many thousands did you say?
1,534 children last year.
Wow, that's huge.
That's huge. And our goal is to reach 100%.
Right.
We currently actually have over 500 volunteers throughout the entire state of New Hampshire.
Okay.
And we still need more.
So since we're talking about volunteers, I'm going to turn to Nigel now.
Great.
And I'm going to say, first of all, maybe, Nigel, as a volunteer, perhaps you could share a little bit about your background and how you came to become a volunteer at CASA of New Hampshire.
Yes, thank you, Mike. I'm a VP with a company called LexisNexis Legal and Professional. We're an information analytics company, and I first heard about CASA from a work colleague. I'm fortunate that I work for a company that has a strong commitment to supporting the communities where we live and work through volunteerism and giving. In fact, all employees are provided with 2 paid leave days each year to volunteer. And I used these in the past to volunteer at the Nashua Soup Kitchen, but I always wanted to do more. And I became aware of the plight of children at risk through my day job, working with the American Bar Association, Center for Children and the Law, and actually in efforts to help combat human trafficking. 5 years ago, I reached a point in my life where I really wanted to give back in a more substantive way. And children are the most vulnerable in our society. CASA seemed like a great fit for me. So in the 5 years that I've been a CASA volunteer, I've worked on 2 neglect cases here in the Nashua courts. And in both cases, the families had various different social workers during the case. I was the consistent face, if you like, through those cases in my role as the CASA, and I hope that that provided some consistency for the children.
That sounds great. So you've been doing this for about 5 years, and how much time do you actually typically spend? Because I've heard that CASA is being a CASA volunteer. That's no small task. That's not like volunteering as a one-off to go stuff envelopes at the soup kitchen or to serve up Thanksgiving dinner. This is a heavier lift than that.
You're right, Mike. It is, but it's perfectly doable. I find being a CASA volunteer very rewarding. And whilst it helps to have a flexible schedule and actually a very understanding and supportive wife, if you're really committed, it's certainly possible to work a full-time job and still be a strong advocate. I would say on average, I probably spend maybe 6-7 hours a month in my volunteer role. That includes monthly visits to the children, sometimes visiting the mother or a grandmother of the family. Every 3 months or so, I'll have a hearing in the Nashua courts that generally maybe takes an hour or 2 out of my month. But again, that's only every 3 months. It's not really that hard to find the hours here and there in the evenings, at weekends, during my workday to enable you to give back and hopefully make a difference for these children.
Well, thank you. That's awesome. One of the things I think is I think a good way to describe the work that you do at CASA, and this is a question really for either of you or both of you, is if you could share maybe 1 or 2 stories about, without obviously names. The names will be, withheld to protect the innocent, right? But examples of where the work has really made a difference in a child's life, if something comes to mind.
Let me think. I don't know that I can think of a very specific example. One of the things I would like to just touch on is that I think the entire state of New Hampshire, we are very aware of the opiate crisis that we are in, and that certainly is highlighted in the newspaper and on the news, and we are all well aware. But one of the things that is oftentimes failed in those stories is that there are children in those homes, there are children in those cars, there are children in those drug raids, in those overdose situations, and so I just want to bring highlight to that. We have oftentimes families who don't necessarily are not happy initially to be involved with DCYF or with the court system, but certainly flourish with the supports and the services that are provided. Our main goal that we're all working towards is reunification. So getting those parents' supports and services, we all try to support the children in that while that process is going on so that they can safely be returned to their parents. And I certainly have been witness to many families who have done absolutely that. We have amazing reunification stories where children are returned safely back to their parents, and there's no doubt that those parents do I would like to think, become grateful for the services and the support that they receive to do that.
So what is your relationship then with so you have the courts, and then you have the state, and you have the families, but there's also this other leg of the stool, which is either children who are living in placement at like the National Children's Home, for example,
yes,
or they're in the foster care system. Those are probably the two ways in which somebody would not be at home. I don't know if there are any others maybe you could share as well, but not be at home. What's your relationship with that leg of the equation?
So we visit with our CASA kids wherever they are. We have kids as far as Vermont, all the way north, right on the border. We have children, as you said, right here in Nashua, and lots of foster homes. Again, one of the things that we are seeing a lot of is that because of the very vastly growing number of cases and lack of placements, we're seeing lots of kids going farther away from their homes, which is challenging. So wherever kids are, we work directly with their placements. We visit them, and no matter where they go, as Nigel said, our CASAs are committed to their case and to their kids. So that is certainly something that we take pride in, consistency for the children.
Okay. Nigel, one thing I wanted to ask you is you talked about your experience with CASA as a volunteer and what you brought you to it. What did you do in your professional life before? Was there some connection here in some way?
Well, yes, there is.
I assume that you're retired, so I apologize for that up front. Maybe you aren't. I don't know.
Well, no, I'm not.
Okay.
I have a full-time, pretty demanding job. I work for a global corporation. We serve customers in 100 countries, and my particular role provides me with quite a lot of international travel.
Okay.
And I think I'd emphasize to anybody listening that if they're interested in volunteering and helping kids in the system, don't think that having a full-time job can prevent you from doing that. It really is not that demanding, providing you have the commitment and the passion to want to do this. And I think that for me, the work that I've done as a volunteer for CASA has really opened my eyes to many things. Molly's mentioned the issues around substance abuse in the state of New Hampshire, and of course hardly a day goes by when we don't hear about this epidemic on the radio or the TV. But what's important, I think, to remember is that we are the voice of these children in the court proceedings. They find themselves in the juvenile court system through no fault of their own. And yes, I have a full-time job. It would be easy for me to think that I don't have time to volunteer. But frankly, when you have the opportunity to help a vulnerable child in this way, you can find the time. One thing I think is important to stress is that CASA of New Hampshire is a great organization. Molly, here with me today, is always there for me if I have a question. The staff, the training, their resources and support for whatever is needed make the role very easy. You just need to have the passion to do what you can to help make a difference. And as I mentioned earlier, being a CASA volunteer for me has and continues to be a very positive experience.
Well, that's great. That's great that you're able to manage that, and I appreciate that message saying that it doesn't necessarily preclude you from doing this kind of work, even if you are full-time employed, and even if you have a demanding job that has a lot of travel involved. So that's incredible. Molly, I know you guys have some events throughout the year, fundraising events and that kind of thing. And I wanted to know what those might be, and if you have anything coming up at any time in the near future that people might want to participate in.
We absolutely do. I also encourage people to go to our website, which is casanh.org. We constantly are having lots of fun events. We are nonprofit, so we certainly are looking for being involved in our events as another way that you can support CASA. Coming up in February, on February 2nd, we have Snowfest, which is up at Loon Mountain. It's a really fun event. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on up there, so we would love for you to join us and participate in that. We're very excited. On February 10th at the Capitol Center in Concord, Seth Meyers is going to be performing 2 shows. Those proceeds are 100% of those proceeds are going to be divided between CASA of New Hampshire and the Granite State Children's Alliance. So we are very excited about that.
That's February 10th, you said?
That is February 10th, and tickets are on sale. And that will be a very fun night for sure.
And that's another organization. I'm friends with Joy, who's the executive director at the Granite State Children's Alliance, and a very different mission than CASA in some ways, but also similar insofar as advocating for children and doing right by kids who have been in situations that are really sometimes pretty terrible.
Absolutely. Yes.
That's great. So CASA NH, is there like a dash or anything in there? Or is just CASA
there is no
NH.
dash. It's just CASANH.org. And if I would also encourage people, if they're interested in volunteering, Nigel is one of 150 volunteers here in Hillsborough who advocate for children. As I said, we have 500 volunteers across the state. If you'd like more information about volunteering and what that process is, you can go to our website. And to become a guardian ad litem, it's a 40-hour training. We do it right at our office in Manchester, and we have those throughout the year, so you can go on and check out our training schedules and upcoming opportunities. And there are other ways. A lot of people, the classic response that we hear is people feel like either they can't give the time or they're worried about the emotional toll that this may take on them. There are lots of other ways you can help us out. You could join a committee, again, attend our fundraisers, help out in our office. We are very welcoming of different volunteer opportunities.
Yeah, that sounds great. I mean, I know that it's true what you say. It's a unique volunteering opportunity in being a guardian, but it's also you're just generally going to have those kinds of volunteer opportunities, helping out with events and, like I said, stuffing envelopes and painting walls and all of the things that as nonprofits that we need to get our work done.
That's right.
Within the budgets that we have. Absolutely. Where does your funding come from typically? Is it mostly through volunteers or through donors, or do you also receive like grants and that type of thing?
So 30% of our funding is through state grants. About 20% is through fundraising. 24% is federal grants, and then the rest is made up of our annual fund, private foundation, and municipal grants.
Okay, that sounds good. So, but as for individuals in the community that want to donate, there's a big part of your budget. Sounds like about 25% of it is fundraising as well.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
And the best way and most fun way to do that is to participate in our events, which are lots of fun. Go see Seth Meyers. That's right.
I've heard really great things about your Loon Mountain snow thing as well. I've never been, but I've heard really great things about it.
We have golfing on the snow. I've never tried that myself, but it certainly is a big fun event.
Fluorescent golf balls or something.
Yes, they must be, right? Yeah.
Like white golf balls in the snow. That's like a strategy not to do well. I'm a bad enough golfer. I don't need that extra.
Yeah, right.
You know. So we're about out of time. I wanted to thank the both of you, Molly and Nigel, for coming on our show today, sharing a little bit about CASA, Court-Appointed Special Advocates of New Hampshire, a remarkable organization doing tremendous work in our community. So thank you for coming on the show today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. And I would just like to take this opportunity to thank all of our volunteers across the state. They are doing amazing work. I see firsthand the amount of time and energy that they put in, how much they care about their CASA kids and our mission of advocating and representing these children in the hardest of times. So
that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I'd like to thank you as well. There are many more volunteers that have been doing this for longer than I have, but I appreciate the opportunity to talk about it this morning. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So just a reminder, in case you forgot while we were talking, you're listening to the United Way Community Connection Show, and I'm your host, Mike Affelberg. We're going to take a short break now for our sponsors, and after the break, we'll be back with our second guests of the day from Girls Incorporated of New Hampshire.
Even